All right. I understand. Please don't kill me, guys. All right. I know it's been like a fucking month or a month and a half or something since I last posted a video. You know, if you want to blame anybody, blame Angel, my ghostwriter. You know, it's all his fault. Blame him. You know, trust. It's all his fault. I'm joking. I've just been busy. Mentally, I haven't been there either. You know, bit of life drama. If you guys are curious, I was in a really bad relationship and now I'm out of it. I got time for videos and stuff. You know, and I'ma be cooking again. All right, I'm a cook. But yeah, I apologize for everything, for the wait and all that. And just so you guys know, this video is mostly scripted and stuff by Angel because he knows more about this subject than I do. He's a big fan of the original. He's a bigger fan of the original content. War Devil Deku, I think, is going to be a banger, but I cannot take credit for this one because I'll be honest, I did almost none of the work. All I'm doing is sitting here talking for an hour. Anyways, I'm sorry for the yap session of an intro. I just wanted you all to get like caught up on my life and all that, and let's get into the fucking video. The story begins with Izuku Midoriya's birth from Inko Midoriya. Technically in this timeline it's not actually Inko, but we'll just say it for simplicity's sake. And when Izuku is born, he's born with jet black hair, you know? Not like a full head of it, obviously, he's a baby, but like a little bit of it. And he has these beautiful amber eyes. And Inko's looking at her son, and she's like, he's so beautiful. And then she passes Izuku over to Hisashi, and, you know, he looks at his beautiful son, he's like, I've never felt so happy in my life. I know I love you more than I love life itself. If you get the song reference, you get the song reference. Anyways, life just lifes for like the next 3-4 years. And we'll skip to the time when Izuku is 4 years old, you know. He's in his room, he's playing with a toy T-Rex action figure and an Optimus Prim one. Not to be mixed up with Optimus Prime. This is Optimus Prim from Taiwan. And so he's playing with those action figures, you know, the knockoff Optimus Prime and the T-Rex. And by accident, something just occurs. He's just playing with them, and suddenly his T-Rex turns into a little dagger. He's looking at it, you know, and he accidentally, like, touches his hand to the blade because he's just, like, you know, kind of playing with it. Because it was his T-Rex, like, 12 seconds ago, like, 12 milliseconds ago. And so he accidentally gives his hand like a giant gash, and you just hear him start to cry and cry, and that's when you hear Inko just running up into the room, you know, opening the door like, and you just see Izuku on the ground with a giant gash in his hand and a little dagger. And even though Izuku's crying from the pain, he looks up at his mother, he's like, I think I awakened my quirk, Mom. And Inko's just like, huh? She then rushes Izuku over to the hospital, you know, because he's got a big-ass gash in his hand. And so she talks to the doctor, and she mentions that Izuku said that he thinks he got a quirk. And so the doctor's just like, okay. I'll set up an appointment for the quirk doctor for you ASAP. And so they end up getting, you know, big stitches in Izuku's hand to help him out. After that, they wait a couple days, you know, just being very careful around everything. And that's when they go to the quirk doctor. When Izuku gets there, he actually explains what happened that night to the quirk doctor. So then he runs some tests, he does a few tests with Izuku, stuff like that. And then he thinks he's got a general grasp on what Izuku's quirk is. Izuku will be able to create weapons from inanimate and animate objects. So, like, be it animals, insects, a toy, stuff like that. It could be anything, and he can create weapons from it. Now, the tier of weapon is based off the guilt he would feel creating that weapon. So, the stronger his attachment to something, the stronger the weapon. He has to feel like he owns it to turn it into something, though. But they don't actually know about like these little nuances yet. This is something they figure out a little bit later on. Anyways, after Inko learns about Izuku's quirk and they head home, Inko starts talking to Izuku, reminding him that he has to be very careful, just instilling this sense of be as careful as humanly possible or you might hurt somebody or yourself. And Izuku, understanding this, he does his best, but he ends up, getting emotional a couple times and, accidentally creating like a mini spear out of his pencil or things like that. And when he realized that he doesn't have full control over it, he honestly just kind of shuts himself down. He just kind of shuts down over the next few years, Stops having like many emotions at all because he's scared to, right? And so hiding behind like this facade of uncaring and everything, just keeping all of his emotions in check so he doesn't end up accidentally hurting somebody or something. He's just become almost numb to it. And something that happens often is he's excluded from a lot of things because after his classmates found out about his quirk, they kind of thought it was weird and dangerous, and they kind of just didn't like him after that, kept their distance. And in the background, you notice somebody going through something similar to Izuku, and that being Toga. But unlike Toga, Izuku, who has become, slightly cynical almost, he still is really talented at everything he does, and he's not, as bad a situation as Toga, because people haven't really seen him use his quirk ever. They just have heard what it is. But Toga, she was caught that one time, nibbling on a bird, and nobody wants to be around her. Izuku's kind of just indifferent, but he doesn't bother approaching her, and she just doesn't approach him. But throughout these years, she begins to develop a infatuation with Izuku, He's her type, he's, strong, quote unquote. And even when he gets in, some fights, he tends to win because he's just good at physical fights more than anything right now. Because he needs a way to defend himself currently. Though Izuku has kind of turned off his emotions and became cynical and stuff like that, Izuku, regardless, is very sure of himself. As bad as he gets treated and everything for a while, he feels sure of himself because he knows who he is and what he is doing is right. And eventually people begin to kind of forget about Izuku's quirk. Like, they know what it is, but since they've never seen it, they're just kind of like, I bet, we homies. But Izuku remains the same. He kind of keeps his distance so he doesn't become like close with them or anything. But he's still not, using his quirk, so people aren't really hating him. I know I'm kind of just saying a little bit of gibberish there, and I'm sorry about that. But this is just a little bit of explanation on kind of how Izuku is now. And he does have like a couple of hobbies, but most things in his life he kind of just pushes out of the way because he finds them more as distractions than anything. But this way of living he's doing is kind of double-edged. It begins to break one down as well as protect the others, so yeah. Anyways, after several years of this kind of dynamic and in the background Toga's infatuation growing and growing, eventually it all comes to head one day when Izuku ends up in a big fight, A couple of people are fighting. Izuku, kind of tries to get them to calm down. She's like, hey, we probably shouldn't be fighting. Somebody will get in trouble. Somebody will get hurt. Blah, blah, blah. And honestly, he just kind of gets dragged into the fight. He ends up, coming out relatively injured, but not too bad. But he won the fight. And that's when, out of nowhere, you see Toga round the corner at Izuku and end up stabbing him in the stomach. And Izuku's like, ah, fuck! And he says the F word, don't worry. And he puts his hand on his side. He sees Toga there with a box cutter with this almost sadistic grin. Because at this point, her infatuation has come to an all-time high. You know? And after he gets stabbed, he's like, fuck! 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 And that's when he ends up, you know, seeing Toga running at him again. And he ends up looking for anything, you know. His backpack's on the floor because he dropped it when he got stabbed. So he can't grab anything from in there at the moment to, you know, turn into any sort of weapon to defend himself. So he's kind of just trying to defend himself with his bare hands, you know, dodging some of her slices, you know. But he's sluggish. So, like, he dodges some of them, but some also, you know, cut him on his chest, on his arm, you know. And eventually, she manages to knock him down and get on top of him. And she starts cutting his face. And while she's doing that, you hear Izuku screaming. And that's when he, like, begins to reach over, you know, screaming, trying to hit away the blade away from Toga, trying to push her off. And he's also reaching for his backpack to grab anything that he owns. And he manages to grab a hold of his pen. And that's when he transforms his pen into, like, a little dagger. And starts, you know, and cuts Toga all over the chest, you know. Just kind of slices. Because as much as she's basically stabbing him, he doesn't want to, like, end up stabbing her and accidentally killing her or something. But this was able to do enough damage to Toga for her to get up and run away. And Izuku is just lying there on the floor with, you know, a stab wound in his stomach, cuts all over his body, his face being cut up. And that's when a student comes around the corner in the hall, sees Izuku on the ground like that, and ends up calling for a teacher and running away. Eventually, you know, the ambulance is called, takes Izuku away and stuff. And Izuku is in really bad condition. With his current state, the doctors were honestly shocked that he was still alive, and he's put in the ICU for a few days. Eventually, he was taken out when he was completely stable, but he now has this big scar around his eye. And so, when he comes back to school eventually, you know, most of his classmates are a lot less, you know, cold towards him, you know. Some of the guys are even like, man, he looks so cool and stuff like that. But even when classmates, you know, end up trying to interact with him after all this, he kind of still keeps them at an arm's length because he's just kind of untrusting. And more than that, he really doesn't ever want to risk hurting anybody like that. Even though it was self-defense, he does feel slightly guilty for cutting up Toga's, like, chest and stuff to save himself. And so Izuku, you know, feeling this kind of guilt and stuff, he is even more set in his way of, like, keeping his distance from his classmates and stuff. And so eventually, you know, his classmates are like, damn, it's not worth, you know, trying to be friends with somebody who doesn't want any, stuff like that. So they kind of just end up leaving Izuku alone after a while. Izuku is perfectly fine with this. And so life just kind of continues until Izuku is around the age of 14. We then go on to the UA entrance exam where Izuku, you know, he struts in with his confidence, you know, because as much as he keeps to himself, he's not like some guy who puts his head down. It's just like, nah, he has the confidence. He's self-assured, but he just keeps everybody at arm's length because he's scared of hurting them. Anyways, he goes into the entrance exam, you know, he uses his pen on the test, and then, so anyways, he goes into the practical exam without his pen, unfortunately, because he's not allowed. And honestly, he kind of just ignores everybody, minds his own business. Eventually, they say, go, 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 what are you waiting for? There's no countdowns in a real battle. And so after that, Izuku just calmly walks. He doesn't run or nothing because he realizes his only hope to actually get a weapon for this is to wait for one of these zero pointers to be destroyed. And after a little bit, Ida had kicked one of the zero pointers and he saw, and a stray piece of metal actually flew off. It's not a very big piece, probably about the size of a pen or a pencil. Wink, wink. Nudge, nudge. And so he turns that into a weapon and then immediately goes in and starts going after robot after robot after robot. And he ends up getting a decent amount of points. He's not like first place, but I'd say he's around like third, fourth. Because he does really well. And eventually, you know, he's still looking for more robots, and that's when you hear the rumbling. I'm not going to do the Eren Yeager joke again. That shit was good enough one time. Anyways, he hears the rumbling and stuff. And so, everybody's getting ready to run away, and Izuku is about to join them, and that's when he hears, "Help! Help me!" And so, Izuku takes his weapon, which I haven't described yet. That little pen-shaped piece of metal, he turned that into a... And when he sees the 0-pointer about to step on Uraraka, that's when he takes the spear and he chucks it, bro. This man would be an Olympian with how hard and far he threw that shit. And it ended up completely destroying like the lower half of the 0-pointer's leg. So then it wasn't able to continue walking towards Uraraka. And so Izuku then sprints over towards Uraraka, you know, lifting up the rubble, taking Uraraka out. And then just sprinting to the entrance with Uraraka and a princess carry. And the teachers and stuff were all like, wow, but where did he get that weapon? And that's when they read his quirk and they're like, oh, he can be a strong hero. The possibilities of what he can do are almost endless. And his adaptability would have to be insane. And so Izuku then... you know, just leaves. And 2 weeks later, you know, he gets a notification in the mail. You have been accepted to UA! From All Might's, you know, audio shit. And he's just a little bit excited. Just a little bit, you know. He's jumping up and down, doing somersaults, you know, doing all kinds of things. A vibe. And, you know, he's got his, you know, what's it called? Ruthless or something? Nice guys always finish last. Anyways, so, you know, he gets his, you know, results that he passed and everything, that he's a part of 1A, stuff like that. And so he goes to school, you know, when school starts, and things are pretty canon until the little test bit. Izuku minds his own business and gets thanked by Uraraka. And then they get all told to go out to, like, training area 1 or whatever for the quirk apprehension test. And so, you know, he actually ends up tossing it to Bakugo, who got the highest score in the class. Izuku's just chilling. And honestly, Izuku is pretty consistent with his scores, going anywhere from 2nd to 4th place. So he ends up with the final placement of like 3rd, you know, after like Bakugo and fucking Momo Yaoyorozu. And so after the quirk apprehension test, you know, Mineta, unfortunately, does not get expelled because this is pretty canonical. And if he didn't expel Mineta, there ain't no expelling nobody. So, after all of this, you know, things remain fairly canonical until All Might arrives, you know, and then he comes through the door like, I am here, entering the class like a normal person. And everybody's like, oh my god, it's All Might! And Izuku's kind of like, oh my god, it's All Might in his mind, but he's actually just like, that's kind of awesome, bro, like, goddamn. And so, he then tells everybody, you know, the clothes make the pros, and tells them all to get dressed up in their hero costumes. And this timeline, I don't think we're gonna do anything crazy for Izuku's hero costume, because for his fit, just imagine Code post limiter removal from Boruto. Give him that fit, but instead of a purple and black color scheme, it'll be a blood red and black color scheme, because, you know, that shit's straight aura. If you hear any noise in the background, it's my dog being a fucking cunt. Yeah, anyways. So, that's Izuku's fit, and honestly, when Izuku is, like, changing in the locker room, everybody just sees that Izuku is fucking ripped. And more than that, they all see, like, that big scar in his stomach, and they're like, bro, what happened to you? Because, like, you have a big scar on your face and your stomach. And that's when Izuku is just like, yeah, I got in a little tussle one time. This is just kind of how it ended up, unfortunately. And everybody's like, you're so nonchalant about it. Izuku's like, because it doesn't matter at the end of the day. So Izuku gets his fit on, you know, and so, you know, the lots remain canon. So it's Uraraka and Izuku versus Bakugo and Ida. That fight goes as you'd expect. Izuku doesn't even end up using his quirk against Bakugo. He literally just boxes Bakugo up. And when he gets upstairs, you know, he just kind of distracts Ida a little bit with some boxing, and Uraraka just touches the bomb. It really wasn't anything crazy. And so, yeah, that's the end of this part. Angel's got to go, and he's the one deciding all the ideas. So I can't really continue it without him because I promised to let him have free reign over this. What if? Thank you for all of you who decided to show up, and I know this wasn't the best quality today. I'm still trying to move, and my dog is being obnoxious while I'm trying to record. But I promise the next part, hopefully, I'll be moved out of this house. And I can put my dog downstairs or something in my new house. But right now, I don't really have anywhere to put him at the moment, unfortunately. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time. Peace.